When an athlete has a career-ending injury, is released from a team, or simply is advanced in age and their career is over, what do they do next? How do they figure out what they want to do for the rest of their lives when sports was their ultimate dream? In today's episode, you'll learn how to revisit that dream, relearn skills you will need to accomplish it, and restart your life. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Holistic Life Coach podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with former NFL player and actor Darrin Charles. Darrin grew up in the Midwest and was a three-sport athlete in high school. After being drafted in the NFL, he saw that when a player's athletic days were behind him, there was a significant drop-off in life success. He speaks to former athletes about revisiting a second, third, or fourth dream and transition from the game of sports to the game of life by sharing his athletic and life journey. But before we jump into this conversation, if you'd like to be a guest on the Holistic Life Coach podcast, shoot me an email at lisa@lswellnessqc.com and we'll talk. Darrin, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, this is great.
It's a pleasure. Can you tell us about where you grew up and how you found this love of sports?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I was Midwest born and raised between Minnesota and Wisconsin, and predominantly raised by a mother raising three large boys, myself being one of those. And I'm the smallest at 6'6". So that kind of says something. And so I found athletics early on, just being exposed to the neighborhood and the community and just trying to be active. And pretty soon thereafter, I really realized at a young age that I was pretty talented. And that might be because I was a big child and frankly, still am a big guy. But it's kind of one of those things where as soon as I touched, the basketball or baseball when I was younger, I just immediately kind of found success. So my journey beginning with athletics was, the brief introduction, finding success, and then being rewarded by the kids I was in school with or, on the teams. And that slowly evolved into something that I realized was an outlet for me in a way out of perhaps my circumstances at the time. Yeah.
How did you focus? What took you towards football then?
Sports was an outlet for me, predominantly basketball and baseball when I was younger. And as I got into high school, I was still very much a skinny kid. And so I had to kind of be safe with myself. And football was a sport that I got involved with later on. It was actually my sophomore year in high school. I needed to put a little bit more weight on. And that was a rough year for me because I was like Bambi, slipping and sliding all over the field. But once I put on a little bit more weight that next year, I was pretty much an All-American, got a lot of recognition. Many schools were offering me scholarships to come play at four-year universities, Division I. And, thinking basketball was going to be my life and then discovering it was football kind of at the last minute was a interesting transition for me. And it basically propelled me to, where I'm at now, give me a great platform to develop my skills and develop myself as a person.
Yeah. What did it feel like being drafted in the NFL?
I remember being really nervous through that process, and I would say a little bit in shock. I mean, I was excited. I had my family around me. Of course, you have your agents, and you just simply don't know what's going to happen. It's a 2-day event, and you're just sitting there nervously waiting to kind of, get validation in a way that you have the skills necessary to get you to the next level. And I remember getting the call. Actually, it was the day after the draft, and I got a call from my representative saying a team wanted to pick me up, and it's an emotional thing. I cried, I was weeping, my family was excited, and it was a culmination of that beginning exploration when I was really young to gradually taking it more serious to realizing that football was going to be the path through to higher education. And then to know that I could compete at a professional level was just really overwhelming.
Mhm.
And then it kind of feels as though life opens up a bit for you. You think about, your financial income and how you can help your family and the things you want because you've been struggling yet working so hard.
Mhm.
So you want to get your toys and do things like that. It was a momentous experience. It was something I'll never forget. And I can say that I participated in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just must be so, I don't know, overwhelming. All that, like you said, all that hard work you've been, you know, that you completed, and then you get that call, and that's just so, like you said, so many emotions running through you at that time. There's just, I mean, I remember, watching the news and like seeing the news stories about someone being drafted, and then, like you said, their families all around them, and then they're, so happy. And that's why I wanted to ask you about
Yeah,
it.
it's that anticipation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is just
Yeah,
something you'll never forget.
it's really that transition of your family,
Mhm.
right? It kind of can change the trajectory of not only your life but your family's as well. And for those who get that opportunity, it's such a blessing. It's such a unique experience, and really once you're there, it's just the beginning.
Mhm.
Again, you're more or less starting over at ground zero to join the ranks of professional level people who are dedicating their life even further and for longer into that path. So
Yeah.
there's chapters, there's levels, there's layers.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just transition after isn't that what life is? Transition after transition. And so, why do you think there is a
That's
drop
that's
off
exactly it.
in an athlete's success after pro sports? Mm.
That's a really great question. Because of the dedication required to master really any
Mhm.
skill, and bringing that specifically here to athletics, it requires a great deal of mental dedication, training, repetition, and there can be a identity uh, association with the things that we do in life. And I think everybody can identify with that aspect of things. And so when you're spending 5 to 10 years plus dedicated to a sport or a craft, and that chapter comes to an
Mhm.
end, whether you want it to yourself or somebody else makes that decision for you, whether it's an agent, a team, or perhaps an injury, something that's out of your control, you're kind of left with the rug pulled out underneath you a
Mhm.
bit. It's hard to let go of something that you've been loving and holding on to and working hard for so long. And specifically for athletes, particularly those who are in college or professional ranks, you're in your late 20s or even further along. And so when you leave that sport and you need to transition back, you're left with whatever foundation you had underneath
Mhm.
that to um, pursue your life's paths, your life's endeavors afterwards. And so if you didn't take your education seriously, or you didn't build certain skills that are applicable to the real world, or we could say the corporate world, then you have to shore up those gaps and those weaknesses. And when you don't have resources available to help guide you or get in front of what the process will look
Uh-huh.
like, then you're kind of left again with the rug pulled out underneath you. So I think that's really where the challenge is in terms of transitioning. And when other people are making money, or you can't get into the workforce in a way that you'd like, and opportunities are minimal because
Yeah.
the athletic world is such a niche space, you really have to set aside so many things. And by that I mean you're used to gaining a lot of attention. Maybe you have a lot of pride for the work that you've completed or the accolades that you've received, but a lot of those things don't apply to the real world. So you have to take the principles that you've learned within the game of sports and transition those tools into the game of life, as I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Do you find that it's hard to talk to athletes about the transition that, you know, being in that headspace of, I have a dream and I'm going to do everything I can to complete it, and keeping motivated and keeping your self-confidence up. And I know with a lot of like self-help uh, things, it's, it, it's that type of mindset, and you don't even want to entertain the, that something else might happen. Like if you think of a plan B, you're already setting yourself up for failure. You need to be plan A all the time. And that's why I'm wondering, is it
Yes.
harder for athletes to, if you when you talk to them, like, hey man, this, I don't know if that's going to happen. This is the track I'm on, and this is what I'm thinking about right now. How is it for them?
Yeah, I actually encourage parents
Uh-huh.
also to get involved and communicate that way as well. Keep your perspective open. This doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes need the support of parents. Oftentimes they are engaged in these activities because they want to better their home life or their home financial circumstances, or a way out of wherever they may feel. And this could be the vehicle for them. As you said, yeah, it takes that singular, narrow vision focus to get to where you want to go. And so it's not about, hitting the nail over the head per se to say, look, this thing's going to end. This ship, the ship will sink at some point. It's no, just remember to say your pleases and thank yous to people. Don't burn bridges that you will need down the road. It's just giving them some tips and tools that will soften the edges in their social experiences and the way they engage in the world. Because, it is, athletes are this separate community in a way. And it's important for them to know that where they're at now, they will carry that forth with them. So, that's one of the pieces as well. And another aspect when I'm talking to them is you're going to have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult for, particularly football players or high performing athletes who maybe aren't emotionally responsive or vulnerable in the first place. And they need to begin that journey inward and developing those things. So I encourage them to support each other as well. And certainly for those who have transitioned and who are transitioning, it's, you got to continue to work your edges as an athlete would. And by that, I mean, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, but it's always important to continue to move forward with the strengths and work with those weaknesses as well. And those areas that you don't have experience in, you're going to need to find some
Mm-hmm.
experience. And also even athletes have coaches, as we know, but I tell them to get coaching in other areas of their life, certainly through transitions and beyond, because we're really only capable of doing what we are able to on our own before we need to get some outside help and
Uh-huh.
assistance. So
Yeah. I know parents who they have dealt with, I guess, they have athletic kids. The kids are very good at athletics. And instead of, I guess, thinking of it as you're going to be, you're going to be the best gymnast, you're going to be the best wrestler, it was more towards, be the best, and maybe you'll get a scholarship to college and you'll be on your college team. But this is more for, getting that scholarship, and not thinking of athletics. And it turns out that the child is very, very good at that sport, and is like one of the best in the state and stuff. But um, they kind of knew that wasn't going to be their, they weren't going to be like professional at it. But I think their love for the game was groomed more than, I don't know, I guess, all these other things, and they ended up coaching. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And so they're still in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there's just different ways of
Yeah,
approaching
I
it.
think that's one of the, yeah. And there's options after when the game ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such as coaching, as you
Yeah.
said.
And so now, how did you discover a new dream and a new goal after the NFL?
Oh, some good questions there. Well, it was a very hard transition,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. Um, I lost, I think, about 15 pounds of muscle in about a 6-month period, which was very quick soon thereafter. So the way I saw myself, quite literally in the mirror, had changed, and so that was a bit of a shock to my mind. And then I no longer had this platform, or I didn't have this platform to really stand on. So it really left me at a loss. And that period for me required a lot of inner work, and I would say adventure is the word, because it's all unknown at that point, particularly when I had been so intimately involved with sports, and that controlled my schedule and my activities and my social circle. And once I got into the college levels, and then transitioning out, it was like, well, my friends are going into the workforce, or some are continuing on into the professional ranks of sports, and then here I am moving in another direction. So I had to allow myself to be with myself and understand what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and just being very, very patient for what was to come next. And I say adventure because it feels that way, because it's so
Mm-hmm.
unknown and uncertain, and I'm exploring what my interests may be. Do I like music? Do I still want to perform in some capacity? Do I want to get a
Mm-hmm.
job in the real world? So all of those things I explored, and I think that's really the key, is allowing some of that to come to you, which means, you're going to try some things, and you're not going to be successful at it. You might fail. You might you're going to need to fall down and get back up, and those are really some of the skills that are applied in athletics that can be identified
Mm-hmm.
for transitions, and how you can use that in the real world.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to come back to the show in a minute. Could you do me a favor? Could you fill out a form at the holisticlifecoachpodcast.com and jump on the horn with me for 10 minutes? I'd like to know your likes and dislikes about the show and the biggest reason you're listening to the show. This gives me a chance to get to know my listeners. Thanks. Now, let's pick up where we left off. Yeah, you have those measurable, those measurable tasks or goals in athletics. And I just reflecting back on what you learned playing football or playing any sport, and um, just transferring those over to life and getting back up and doing it. And I know I've done that. I played softball when I was a girl. And it was funny because I had,
That's
when they have
awesome.
these, like these sports banquets, and the coach would get up there, and it was really funny because two of my coaches have said the same thing about me, and it was something that I drew on later in life, and they said, we've never met anyone, Lisa never gives up. No matter what we would give her to do, she would never give up. When she was pitching, she was out there pitching until it was dark and the street lights turned on, and we had to tell her she had to go home. And I would be like, I really got to work on this. And it's just this persistence
Yeah.
is just innate with me. I don't know how to give up. I don't know, and maybe some people call it stubbornness. I don't know.
What a great quality
But
to
you know
have.
what? It's come
It may take some of that.
but it's come back later in life when I go back and I think about that, and I'm like, okay, that's right. That is something that is just part of my personality. And until I get something right.
And useful,
Yeah.
I'm
And it was
sure.
just something that I learned. And it was so nice to hear that from two different coaches, I know, who don't know each other, who saw that.
Do you think softball gave that to you?
Um, I think I think that was the vehicle of finding that out. because I was just when I played softball, when I started in the neighborhood, and I was a tomboy, and it was me and the boys, and that was hard because I had to compete with
Mm.
them. And then when I was on the teams, the park leagues or whatever, I had just, it was just more practicing, and I had that confidence there. And then I saw, of course, I wasn't as good as the other players. I had some work to do. And I think that's what sports gave me, was that confidence. And then just, like I'm not going to, I can do this, and I can show myself, I can show them that I can do this. And it just gave me that tenacity to do it. So,
Oh, that's incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think athletes are very, we should encourage our kids to get out and get active for just a number of health benefits, but for the reasons as you explained, how it helped you, these qualities, these characteristics of character that it brings out, and I think we can highlight those attributes and discuss more how they can be applied to the real world. And as you can hear, obviously from your experiences, like it's applicable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think sports gives so much to kids, and just the love of the game. Something my father told me years ago was he loves baseball. And so he says, if you really love the game, you'll go watch little leaguers play. And I was thinking about that one. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, if you love, it's the love of the game and the things you can learn, which brings me back to the things you can learn about yourself when, you're on a team and being a team player, or when you have to, if you're a solo athlete, and things you have to draw upon that can help you later in life. So what did you do when you were discovering these things about yourself? I know you started a book club, and do you want to go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say about 4 years ago, I really, really got interested in reading, which wasn't something that was a priority for me through my school days. There was plenty of reading and assignments to be done there. And in fact, I went to college, got a communications degree, and I was writing like a crazy man. And so it kind of got to the point as I was discovering life and wanting to get into this entertainment field that there is just so much that I didn't know, that school didn't prepare me for, that I wasn't seeking on my own. So I kind of had this epiphany, and I thought, where can I find these resources? And obviously books were the way to go. And so I started sometimes reading a book a day. I was just really enthralled with gathering this information and how quickly I was able to absorb it and apply the tips and the tools that were available to me. So on my own time, I was doing that. And then I thought, well, God, I love reading. And, I was a little hesitant as a, former athlete to kind of be in this, what I had perceived at the time as perhaps this nerdy space. And, but the tools were just really helping me so much. So then I thought, well, maybe I can just, in the social media world, I'll just read some books and I'll post a little bit of content in my obscure page, and it'll be a way to develop new skills and kind of go from there. And then as I started doing that, I realized, well, this is fun and this is beneficial, and maybe people will find this. And then I started picking up a more clear mission on how I wanted to tell my story and experiences to other people. So then it evolved into this book club. It's Darrin's Book Club. It's on Instagram. I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit later. But basically, it's nonfiction books. It's self-development, self-improvement. There are some spiritual type books in there as well. And I guess I don't think of them entirely as spiritual books, but I guess it depends on your beliefs. I look at them as baseline levels of tools and tips that are directly applicable to life, no matter what field you're in. And so it's more of a resource thing like that. So for the last little over a year, I think a year and a half, I've had the book club, and once a month I'll release a book. I'll put the title in there, and anybody can pick it up. I'll put some quotes, and I'm just looking for people to engage with me, discuss the books, see if they like it, or just generally come there and get some really good content. And now, as it's evolved, I'm seeing it as a tool that I can carry along with me that not only documents the content that I've read, but also as a resource to give out to student athletes for them to take a look at and search for the things that have really moved my life forward in positive ways. And I think I'm seeing success with that. It kind of cuts all the gray area out of life. And it's like, well, here you go. If you want the best of engaging in dating relationships, here's a book that can help you deal with conflict or how to approach certain aspects of things. And they're not boring at all. So that helps too.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite?
Well, most recently, I think it was last month or the month before, there was a book by an author, G.S. Youngblood, and the title is The Masculine in Relationship. And that was really eye-opening, even a year and a half in. It gives, the masculine in a relationship. I think it deals with heterosexual relationships, but if you identify as masculine in the relationship, you can kind of use this tool, and it gives you a great structure to approach the feminine, to deal with conflict and move through perceived resistances to continue to build bonds and help your relationship flourish. So, you get into a book like that because you realize that you could perhaps be better, or you're not equipped because nobody really knows these things, right? You can go, this is like having a coach that you can pick up the book at any time, and then you apply it, and you see that it works, and it like all of these books can transform your life if you're willing to do it. So yeah, that was a favorite for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I've read various books, and even books that were written like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You look at and you go, oh, this still pertains to today, And, when you talk about we aren't told these things in school. We aren't taught these things. And I have what's called a love class, and it's based on I don't know if you're familiar with Leo Buscaglia. He was really big in the 80s and on PBS, but he wrote a book called Love. And so, he talked about that. He talked about how he had a student she was so kind to him. She said she actually listened to me when I would lecture. And I always look forward to her papers. And, one day she wasn't in class, and the next week went by, she wasn't in class. The week later, and she says, I went to the person in charge of their department, and he says, do you know what's going on with the student? I don't know if she dropped class or withdrew, what happened. And the lady who was in charge says, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you knew. And he says, what happened? And he says, she committed suicide. She had walked over to Pacific Palisades, got out of her car, left the car running. There was a couple there having a picnic. And he says, without hesitation, they said she just walked right over the cliff. And here she was. He says, 18 years old.
Oh, my God.
And we taught her everything. We taught her arithmetic. We taught her how to spell. We taught her how to read. But we didn't teach her about her potential and how much life there is. And he never found out why. I don't know if she ever left a note, but that is why he started his love class.
That's so tough.
And his book is 30 years old, but when you read it, it's like, this is what we need right now. So, I mean, there's just, and it's funny that, the human condition hasn't changed, and we just have different messengers for these messages. And sometimes that's what it takes. I have found that depending upon who the messenger is, it may resonate with you. It may not resonate with you. and you go, wait a minute, I heard that before. Oh, that person said that, but for some reason it resonated with you and someone maybe you can relate to more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's just, I mean, there's so many
It,
books, and like I found like you read just different about different things like relationships, or if you need help with transitions, and there's something out there, and they just make you, I don't know, they made me a more well-rounded person.
well, undoubtedly, it has to help because we're just not that informed. Yeah, I think as when we're young, we expect our parents to have all the answers, and then at some point we realize that they're
Hmm.
fallible, that they are human, and you weren't necessarily equipped with all the skills that you had, and you might get upset at coaches, teachers, your parents, and you just can feel frustrated and want to kind of give up on life. And I think that if we can instill a message of being proactive and seeking out the resources, of course, there's all this information online right now, but get involved, listen more to, your podcasts, and, this book as a recommendation. Somebody can really just start there, and, 5 pages a day can turn into you devouring a book. It can be that simple. And,
Yeah.
so yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with
it can
you.
be that
Yeah.
simple. It doesn't have to be overwhelming when you pick up a book and go, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how people do it, people who like to read. And, like you said, 5 pages a day, or you just put a timer on, okay, 15 minutes, and you just break it down.
That's a great tool. That's a great tip. Yeah, you put a timer on. Give yourself a timer. That's huge. You could apply that really in other areas of your life. In fact,
Mhm.
last year I put myself on a timer for different activities. But yeah, that's it. Give yourself 15 minutes, shut everything down, and see where it leads you. And I also think that if there's a kind of to the story that you were talking about regarding this book called Love, if there's a space or a place in someone's life that you're not happy with, or you want to improve that, find a book and set a timer, and you will see that aspect of your life improve simply by just reading. Because once you're informed, you'll know that you can't let yourself down in those spaces and places, because now you know better, more or less. So I highly
Yeah.
recommend that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, it, yeah, like it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And then when you learn, you just keep learning, and it's so much fun to learn. I remember, yeah, going to school. Oh no,
I
but
agree.
it's just a different kind of
Yeah.
learning, and um, yeah. So yeah, there's just so many, and I'm sure.
And now you get to choose what you get to
Mhm.
learn. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we have come to the part of the podcast where it's called Five Random Questions. So, are you up for it?
Okay. I am excited is the word. Yes.
There's a
Nervous, excited. Yes.
well, take your time. Take your time. So here's number one.
Okay.
If you could have dinner with any three people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Okay. Okay. So this is a strange assortment, of course. Not in any particular order. I'd love to have a conversation with Barack
Uh-huh.
Obama, understand that life journey. Michael Jackson. I mean, to be at such incredible heights, and to get that perspective would be
Uh-huh.
incredible. And then Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he's a psychoanalyst, and he's got some books in my book club, and he's just a brilliant mind about the human condition. So I think I could learn a lot from leadership all the way to entertainment and the human uh, capacity. So yeah, I would love to have those three at
Oh,
dinner.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
really interesting. His 12 rules of life. You know, there are books.
Yeah. Oh my
There are
gosh.
books that I have that, I like to have the hard copy. So, and I highlight and I put, sticky notes in there. And then there are books that I have, the Audible book. Uh, and I found there are just certain books that when the author narrates it, it's a different experience than reading it on the page. And then there, and that's one of them. I was listening to it in the car, and it's just like, yeah.
Totally agree with
So,
you.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure we could sit down and talk about that book. But
I
yeah,
know we could. I know we could.
yeah. So,
Pick it up,
yeah,
people. Pick
yeah.
it up.
And so, what is your morning routine?
As soon as my alarm hits, I roll over and I put on Pandora.
Mhm.
And I play this channel throughout my place. It's Ali Farka Toure, and he's a very, very famous West African artist. And so it's got these very simple melodies, kind of like a little Afro fusion kind of vibe to it. And it feels fresh and uplifting, but not overwhelming, and very grounded. And so I like doing that. And then I'll put some tea on or have some coffee, and I will get into my gratitude journal, and I'll just riff as long as I can over that warm cup and settle into my body a little bit, open up the blinds, do that kind of thing. And then I'll be thinking about my to-do list soon thereafter. What do I have checked off? What do I need to accomplish? And where can I fit in a workout into my day? And that usually propels me. I used to do like a 10-minute walk every day to get my body going. I was overcoming a serious back injury that kind of stemmed from my football days. And so just everything is about warming up the mind, the heart, and my body, and just getting ready for the full day ahead. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, well, what is your favorite pump up song? What song just moves you and gets you going? And
Yeah, I there's a song by Big Sean, and it's more so kind of gets my heart going, gets my drive going. It's called "One Man Can Change the World," and it's kind of like an underdog song. It's slower paced, but it's just reminds me of the challenges that I had been in, the places that I had come from, and it empowers me to realize that, as big as my dreams and goals are, all I got to do is just keep chipping away at it. And, maybe my dreams can change the world for the better in some way. So yeah, I love that. And of course he's from Detroit, Michigan, and that's near where I grew up. So yeah.
Midwest. Yeah. Yeah.
Midwest. Yeah.
It's just Midwest. I guess that Midwestern sensibility, whether you're from, like, I'm from Chicago, and, being from Wisconsin or Michigan, or now I'm in Iowa. It's just it's a different sensibility. Now there is a difference between Chicago and Iowa. I will give you that. But I don't know. It's just, we all connect. Once you hear somebody's from the Midwest, connect with that person, kind of know.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Same thing out here. I'm in LA, as you know, and, when you run into somebody, it's just the verbal acknowledgement, and then you just kind of continue on, of course, with that appreciation for that person. So yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
You're going to settle into this thing called life eventually, and it will become more than you can ever imagine it will be.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah. That is just beautiful. I like that. To settle into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of heart that comes through in that statement, and I think it's just that it's the soft, tender direction and touch, and knowing that, as frantic and as chaotic as the world is, and you're trying to find a place to settle into, you'll find that space. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So I have one more for you. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Something like, congratulations. I'm so happy you're here. You did it. You walked the path that I laid out for you. And that would sum it all up for me there.
Yeah. I got tears in my eyes when you said that. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. It just having done, everything that you could, that you felt intuitively, that you were guided to do, and you sacrificed everything to get towards that purpose and that mission, and having faced your fears and realized your dreams and still been good to people, and shared that blessing with others, that would be completion for me. And then that recognition of having faithfully done that. So yeah, I would love that.
Yeah. So, Darrin, where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
The best place right now, Instagram, Darrin.Charles. You can find my book club through my Instagram page there, or you could go directly to Darrin's book club. I also have my website, DarrinCharles.com. And so Darrin's with an I, 2 R's and an I-N, DarrinCharles.com. And the site's being built up right now, but it'll have links to the content. And, if you want me to come speak at schools or events or to others in the community, that would be the best way.
Okay. Yeah, I saw your website, and I saw your picture on there, and I said, who does he remind me of? He reminds me of someone. Then it dawned on me. I'm like, Reggie John Page of Bridgerton. I don't know if you're from.
Of course I do.
Listeners, you have to check out his webpage because he's, got the tux on. And I thought, I just couldn't put my finger on. Then I went, that's it? That's it?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, you know why it's so funny is because, obviously he's wonderful, he's talented, he's handsome, all those good things. But, I had a bunch of people messaging me on social media saying, you know who you look like? You could have been on that show. So this is more validation.
Well,
that's so funny.
Yeah. Well,
I'm actually blushing over here. I'm super red.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
And all of Darrin's contact information will be in the show notes. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Holistic Life Coach Podcast. Show notes can be found at theholisticlifecoachpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to be notified when the next episode drops. Until next time, beautiful souls.